I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager or their designee to enter into a lease with Angus DeRocher for the Enfield Passenger Depot.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
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 Item, the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of February 2nd.
One more. Want to make a motion?
I think we'll make a motion that you should appoint the committee with.
It's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Oh, approval of the minutes of February 2nd.
I have nothing on those minutes.
Yeah. On a roll here.
Move we accept the minutes of February 2nd, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Board reports. Tracy, you have anything?
I have nothing from Energy.
I have nothing.
The planning board had a meeting, relatively straightforward one with a single voluntary lot merger out on Johnston Drive.
The Enfield Village Association is having their annual meeting tomorrow night at the community building, and that's the update.
Thank you.
I will make a note. Energy, not energy committee related, but the legislature has tabled proposed bill which was going to remove the tax exemption for solar property. Bill has been tabled. It could come back and haunt their procedures, but I don't think it's very likely.
Yeah. Discuss that.
Fortunately, it may be gone, at least for this year. It is something to keep in the back of our minds. Try again.
Good point.
Thank you for all those that was worth supporting.
Next up, we have the town manager's report.
Yes, thank you. As I've mentioned before, the police department has started the search for replacement for Mike Wade's position. We do have one promising candidate moving through the process, but are continuing to look for additional candidates until that position is officially filled.
Is that a certified officer?
No, it's not.
We'd have to go to academy.
Finance director update, MRI reported as of the late last week, we had 8 candidates, and of those, they are interested in 4. The deadline for first review is February 23rd. Elisa and I did speak with an interested candidate from Enfield last week who stated that they would be putting in an application. So I do expect us to end somewhere probably around 10 applications by the time the 23rd comes around, and I will let MRI do the initial screening of those. As you mentioned, HB 1002 was voted 187 to 157 to table, which is hard to do because it was actually on the consent agenda, and so it's pretty hard to move it off there. So good work. I did write Representative Frack and Senator Prentice on that bill to let them know that the town did not agree with repealing this exemption. So if for some reason it does get taken back off the table, Senator Prentice is aware of it as well. So, the DB lights, the lights at Hughes Park, Todd Thompson and I met with Devin from DB Lights about the Christmas display at Hughes Park. Discussion overall was that everybody was happy with the way things went for the first year, and we are planning to work together next year with some minor changes that we'll be putting together. Also wanted to let the select board and community know that we saw no noticeable difference in the electric bill. It actually averaged about $30 lower than the last 6 months combined during the November-December timeframe. So I think the air conditioners and stuff in the community building actually pull more power than what those lights did. So he said that he did a little analysis of the wattage usage of those lights, and it equaled a little bit less than a refrigerator would for a year's worth of time if it was to go over a
So
year.
perhaps
So
because the HVAC just didn't have a demand, lights didn't cause much of
yeah,
a
it
ripple.
kind of varies normally in the 400, upper 400 range. We had a couple months, I think the fair month, and then August must have been a hot month that were a little bit higher than that. So that pulled the average up a little bit, but overall there was really no noticeable difference.
I think it was very well received. I'd love to see him come back and perhaps expand it a little bit. And I'd like to see us cooperate with him to give him a couple of extra opportunities to plug in. I know he had some minor difficulties this year. Our part, I think we should contribute and help him along to make it easier for next year.
And most of the difficulties this year were equipment on his side, but we will definitely be working with him.
There were a couple of places where he had difficulty plugging in because everything comes from the side.
No, just out front. Most of his display was plugged into the pavilion in the back.
What was it?
It was fine on our part. We will be helping him, and if he hasn't put it out already, he'll be putting out an announcement that he'll be back. And I wrote him a little blurb saying that the community overall was happy working with him. So,
Hopefully it grows.
Potato Road Culvert, the notice of posting requirement for the Potato Road Culvert FEMA mitigation grant has completed with no comments being received by the town or the state that I know of. The state has now forwarded the grant on to FEMA for final. So we're moving through that process. On the UVBA, the Upper Valley Business Alliance met with Rob and I last week to discuss everything going on here in Enfield. Just a little bit of time for us to meet with them and show off all the stuff that's been happening in Enfield. We also showed off our new space up here. They've been looking for a place to hold their economic breakfast. And I am happy to announce that the UVBA contacted me today and has decided to host their economic outlook breakfast here in Whitney Hall this year. The event will be held March 18th, and we're expecting about 100 people. It'll be a great time to showcase our room here a little bit. I'll work on some more soundproofing, but I think with 100 people in the room, it'll help out as well.
That'll be an interesting test for what I suspect could wind up being the deliberation session for next year or the following year. But at some point, we could find ourselves down to about 100. Be interesting to see how 100 fit in here.
In the land use, Rob met last week with Optimistic Brewing, Dan and Tim, who work there. They've recently acquired a new 15-barrel stainless steel brew house. So I think I told you guys before, they're doing really good, not only here in Enfield, but in Sunapee. They've had trouble making beer. So their old brew system was a 5-barrel system. They have now purchased a 15-barrel system to be able to process. And then they also did confirm, and we can announce now, that they will be taking over the former Kitchen 56 restaurant space. They're planning to open an American-style independent restaurant that's not exclusively a Optimistic affiliate. And they will offer sit-down and take-out food and fare, and they're hoping to be open before St. Patty's Day this year.
That's pretty good news.
That solve their licensed need?
I think it will. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think you'll see most of their food and tasting stuff go across the street. They'll serve some other food and beverages there as well. And I think you'll see them over the next few years continue to expand in the building they're in for brewing purpose.
We still on tap that we might see a cooler outside? Still going to happen?
I believe so. I haven't heard any difference, but I don't know at this point. They're working hard and they're doing well. So
Oh, great.
it's a little bit off my report, but I don't know if you guys seen it, that they collaboratively made a beer with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith. Dan was flown out to California for some awards type benefit, and it's the Beer is proceeds like $1 from every the Janie's Fund. That's a Aerosmith suicide prevention fund. So nice to see a local brewery getting tapped in like that.
Yeah, that's great.
That's neat.
Again, on the economic development front, Kim Quirk reports that the new fabric studio tenant and her Main Street former Revision Energy location is painting and prepping to open that shop soon. I don't have a date for that, but it's their new business coming to town.
To open what sort of shop?
It's fabric, sewing, quilting type stuff.
Okay.
And then the new Bobcat dealership on Route 4 on Hardy Road and Route 4 there, it says here is starting this week, but it was actually had the open sign out today, and there's some equipment in the front yard. So
What was that again? Which place?
it's the Bobcat dealer.
Oh,
on the
okay,
corner
yes,
of Hardy Road.
right.
So it's nice to see them open and another business coming to town. As Eric mentioned, the planning board approved a 3-lot voluntary merger on Johnston Drive. All 3 lots were non-conforming, and the new single lot is less non-conforming. ZBA has 1 application for March for an area variancy setback intrusion at 111 New Hampshire Route 4A along Lake Mascoma. I don't have any more details than that, but if you want to learn a little bit more about that, talk to Rob. So far this year, we've had 5 building permits issued. We do believe that that'll pick up again once the weather starts to turn. And then Vinny had attended the New Hampshire building officials training last week for an overview of inspection of engineered wood products. And he also attended a class and meeting on possible updates to child care inspection. Continues to get a lot of training in those areas that'll help us in inspections. In the public safety front, the police department has officially been accredited as a New Hampshire state accredited police department. We were the 5th department in the state to receive this accreditation. I can let the chief speak to it if he wants, but the board was so impressed with the Enfield presentation and preparation that they've asked Chief Holland and Deputy Fry to join the accreditation team as assessors.
Cool.
This Friday, the police department will be hosting a retirement gathering for Mike Crate from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. So we invite everybody to come by and thank him for his many years of service with the Enfield Police Department. And then 3 members of the police department have started EMT classes, and the first practical day was last week and will continue on Thursdays until May. So excited to have them moving through that process. On the DPW front, as you guys know, the grant truck that we got from the the diesel grant was delivered and it's working well. One of the pieces of equipment, or a couple pieces of equipment that they really liked on this new truck was the backup camera and a camera mounted in the body so they could see salt levels and how the salt was working in the back. They were so impressed with that actually that we ordered 6 more cameras and they outfitted all of their trucks with those cameras the past couple of weeks. It's really good because it's a safety issue for those drivers to be out climbing up in the back of their truck to see salt levels when they can watch a cab of the truck.
That's terrific.
The town has requested and will receive an energy incentive grant from Liberty Utilities towards a variable frequency drive that'll be installed at the McConnell well. This grant's for $1,125 and it covers 20% of the unit's cost. This drive will allow for slow motor startup and for the well to be pumped at different rates. Right now, you either turn it on or you turn it off. This will allow us to adjust those rates a little bit more in there. It's more energy efficient and it'll also allow us to experiment with hardness mitigation. When we pump that well really hard, we pull a lot of hard water out, and if we pull it at a lower level, we should be able to have less hard water coming out of there. As we discussed, and we'll discuss some more tonight, we're also working on the issue in that time. The Water Sewer Department also invested this year in an automatic reading system. little bit better than what we had before. This system goes in the truck, makes it really easy for them to read water meters. This system did pay off last week with the discovery of a significant leak at the Lakeview condominiums units with the very cold weather that we've been having. Jim sent the water sewer staff out to do a non-billing meter reading because it's so easy to do now. With the new system, this can be completed in about 30 minutes. The information was uploaded and it flagged an address with a continuous use. So we went back looking at that property at Lakeview. They found that it was running 22,000 gallons per day. The owner lives in Minnesota and summers here in Enfield and was contacted. They had someone check on the unit and found a burst pipe in the ceiling. The situation was handled and repairs have been started. Without this, the system leak would have continued for another 45 days until the end of the quarter, causing damage to the unit and wasting water that we did. So
I believe their homeowner's insurance will cover that water bill, by the way.
probably, actually, they're not on our water, so it wouldn't do our water. They're on a well out there. They're not on our water, but they are paying a sewer bill, so it'll help with those types of things.
Mine insurance will cover that bill. They should submit it anyway.
We'll probably write it off because it wasn't going down the sewer. It was going on the floor or in the ceiling. But anyway, it was a great use of this piece of equipment that we could run out in 30 minutes and check to see if there's any major water leaks. Highway staff did what highway staff in this town do often. On a sub-zero day, they redecked, repaired, and repainted 3 highway flatbed trailers. They redecked the trailers with leftover bridge planks that were used from a recent bridge project. So they've been really good at recycling lumber and recycling different things from other projects. So we just thank them for their ongoing work in that area. And then we'll see tonight that the water sewer emergency plan's been being worked on to be updated by us. Then recreation's the last of my report. Today was the last day of Whaleback Ski Ride Program. The program went very well this year. Again, we would like to thank the volunteers that helped out at Whaleback Mountain staff, Mascoma School District, and Butler Bus Company, and we look forward to continuing this program next year. Some summer camp details continue to be worked out, but we do have now that online registration for Enfield residents will start on March 17th at 9 a.m. If it doesn't fill up during that time frame, non-residents signups will start on March 24th. Spots are expected to be reserved quickly. Information will continue to be distributed online through school newsletters, posters, etc. later this. And then the only other thing I have from recreation is that the Easter egg hunt has been scheduled for April 4th. I don't have times for that yet, but if you set on your calendars that April 4th will be the Easter egg hunt, we will get.
Thank you very much. Next up, business of the evening. Chief, you're up first with a police drone donation, setting a public hearing date.
Hello. A few months back, Deputy Chief Fry and Sergeant Smith came to me and thought that it would be a good idea to get a drone as a force multiplier for the department. Obviously, going through our budget this year, I said, heck no, unless you could find a grant to do it. So they did what they did. They went out and applied for a grant and got one. The drone itself is about $12,000, and the other $3,000 is for training and extra parts and stuff like that for the drone. For the initial part, we're going to send 3 officers to, they'll be FAA certified drone pilots, and then their certification is good for 2 years or 24 months, and so then every 20, it'll be part of our regular training plan to keep 2 to 3 drone operators, if approved, on staff. What I could say is, just in the last 4 months, we've used Lebanon's drone at least 3 times, and we use it for a whole variety of different things, but mostly it's when we have like missing or endangered people, or something happens in a remote area that's going to take us a little time to get there, we can put the drone up, they get out there and there's kind of eyes in the sky. This is a thermal equipped drone, so it'll be able to see heat signatures and stuff at night. We think coupled with our new K9 team, this just makes us that much more capable of helping finding people quicker. It can be used in tactical situations, but New Hampshire law is very specific on that. If we're going to use it in a house or for something like that, when you get a search warrant for it, we will follow all those rules, and we already have a pilot standard operating procedure, policy ready to go in place if this goes through.
That's great.
If I understand it, Chief, this donation is coming from the Byrne Foundation?
That is correct, yes.
Great. Very nice of her, once again. I did, by the way, my brother-in-law runs a drone company in Maine if you need any assistance.
Okay.
But it sounds like you've chosen a drone and made arrangements for training. One thing that he mentioned, and I looked up, is you can get what's called a Certificate of Authorization, COA. You get the COA for the police, then you can train each other so that you do not have to go to training beyond the first person. Just makes it simpler as you move on for that one person to train others.
Yep. So I looked that up, and then you don't have to pay the $125. We want to
Exactly.
send. We want to send, and that's why we put in for a little extra money in the grant. We want to send people to initially anyway. So I have a drone myself. I crash it a lot. So we'd rather send people to. Mine's owned like a $50 drone, not a $12,000 drone. So we want to send people to an actual pilot school first, but that's definitely something we're going to look at into the future of training our own people.
You get the COA right at the beginning with the first pilot.
Okay.
Once you get your first pilot, he applies for the COA for your organization. You should be granted it from that point forward.
Thank you.
I have a sort of random question.
Sure.
May not be the right time to ask it, but I'm getting a lot of very strange ads online, organizations seeking to send me marijuana, my address in New Hampshire, saying this is all totally legal. Do you
It's
have a
not.
response to that?
Most likely, it's some kind of like spyware / online. Eric could probably speak to it better than I am, but those malware types things that when you click on the link, it adds you to a list, and this and that. And even if it's not legal, unless you have a prescription in New Hampshire.
Right.
And then I believe based off of that, you still have to get it from a New Hampshire licensed dispensary or a dispensary in another state. So, yeah.
I suspected as much, but I thought I'd better find out.
Yep.
A couple people have asked me. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. Eric?
I'll make a few comments. I guess first, I'll go the exact opposite way of Tracy. I'd encourage outside training. We do a fair bit of work with large drones, and having the outside perspective is highly valuable in operating them. It's not like operating the small $50 drones. They're actually quite different from a safety perspective. Which brings me to, you selected one. Do you know which the manufacturer is?
I don't know off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Okay, so as you get into that, some very well-known manufacturers have very serious data privacy concerns, to the point where, like, my company's not allowed to use them for government contracts. And they say they have all the privacy settings, but then if you look into their user agreement, they are still sending data such as positioning and photographs and things back to their own servers, even when you have selected that you don't want them to do that. So there are some very serious privacy concerns, which would apply here. Like if you were to have a search warrant for somebody's house and to use it, you would not want that data to leave in that way. So we'll want to make sure we understand that whole picture, and it's manufacturer to manufacturer. The Buy America laws help protect it a lot if it's an American-based one, but it's not a guarantee.
Well, there's 3. We've picked out the one, I guess you'd say your wish list one, and it's based off other PD's reviews, but I'd be happy to work with you on some of the privacy stuff too.
Yeah, no, I know enough to be dangerous.
Gotcha.
And I know that like we have applied to use various drones in various situations on like government sites, and they flat out say no. And we have to remove equipment in order, you know, like in some cases, they'll let you fly a drone if you remove the hardware that it comes with and put on your own hardware or something like that. Like it's just, it's a little complicated. And it's not as simple as picking out your privacy settings. So anyway, there'll be a learning curve.
No, it's good information. I'll double check on
Yeah.
that before we actually,
Right.
once the hearing's done.
And I'm happy to tell you what I know and put you in touch with the people I know who do it as well. I am glad to hear that New Hampshire already has laws and rules and that our department has a policy. I mean, I do have concerns around surveillance state type stuff. I don't have concerns with you or our department. You guys do a great job. You maintain very high standards, and that's, you know, this will be a tool well used in your hands. But I would encourage a policy that basically treats the drone the same way it would treat an officer when entering private property.
That's, and over the years, that's how New Hampshire has chosen to recognize drones. And we obviously, as I've said, over and over again to other people is, in New Hampshire, you're only as good as your reputation. And, that's not something we're willing to risk our, do the right paperwork, do it the right way, and then you don't have to worry about anything like that. So if it's used in a surveillance, tactical type situation, we'll apply for warrants, and if they're granted, we'll use it. And if they're not, then we'll find other means.
There are all sorts of applications that you're going to find that are very helpful for.
Yeah, it's just a whole, whole different world to me, so.
Any further comments from the board?
Um,
Go ahead.
So Eric said a lot of the things that I was thinking of, basically this like surveillance / tactical piece. I understand the circumstances under which you would want to use it if you were looking for someone, like lost people or people you think may be in danger.
Yep.
But I think the two words that come to mind when I think of a police drone in my town is like creepy and invasive. And so I wonder if there's a way that we could come with like facts about the warrant process or like the differences, just so we could present it in such a way that it might take that feeling out of it.
I'll be happy to, obviously during the public hearing, I'll be happy to answer questions to anybody, and hopefully those people that have concerns can watch this and feel free to call me and ask me about it. But like the tactical application for the most part, especially right now as new drone operators, stuff like that would be, an extra eye circling a building to make sure somebody, like say we had a barricaded subject in a building and we're trying to watch all the doors and we're still getting officers there, you can put it up and it can keep circling the building to make sure nobody leaves, that I hate to call people bad guys because not everybody's a bad guy, just make bad choices sometimes, but the suspect didn't leave and stuff like that. But anything that what would be considered, so in the state of New Hampshire, drones are applied just like officers to the fact of what's your expectation of privacy, and anything that would invade your expectation of privacy would require going through the courts to get approval, and we would strictly follow that.
Yeah, I'm more practical, and I want you to survey all town municipal roofs.
It will do that.
Yeah.
Be a multiple tool that will share with the fire department too. I've already talked to Phil about working with them on stuff like ice rescue and boats in the water and stuff like that. It's a great tool to be able to, one of the hardest things, and I don't want to take up a whole bunch more time, but like one of the hardest things I've personally dealt with in law enforcement is when we had people go missing in the water and you're on a very short time frame, having a tool like that you could put up that could pinpoint a location and keep circling until you can get people out there is an asset that can help us in response.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you guys?
Motion set up.
I'll make a motion to authorize the acceptance.
No, we're not accepting it. I need a motion to set a public hearing.
So we need to set a public hearing, not the motion to accept.
You have, for items as large as $15,000, over 5,000, we have to have a public hearing before we can.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for March 2nd at 6 PM at Whitney Hall to discuss acceptance of a donation of $15,000 for the purchase of a drone.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next up, Connell Well Uranium issue.
Yeah, I guess I'm up on this one. We're coming to you today to ask for authorization, I want to say to sidestep, but to use the professionalism clause in our purchasing policy to work with McClure Engineering, who is working with the company who set up New London filtration system for their uranium. They had a lot more uranium than we had. It was about 90 parts. They measure that. And we're in the 30 to 32 parts. So we have a lot less than they do. They have a lot bigger problem than we do, and they set up that filtration some time ago.
Years.
About 10 years ago, and they've had no real problems with their filtration system. So with this, before we received a letter of deficiency from the state of New Hampshire, we were working with McClure Engineering, who was doing some work pro bono for us, trying to help us get prepared to move in the direction of putting in one of these filtration systems, or at least preparing to. In that time frame, we received a letter of deficiency, which is also in your packet.
I'm thinking that the bottom line here is the last paragraph. Accordingly, you recommend that the select board vote to waive the RFP requirement and authorize town manager to execute a professional service agreement with McClure Engineering in the amount of $19,000.
Yes, and the other part that goes along with that is the letter of deficiency has some stricter time frames in it, so we need to be moving along. So using that professional services provision in the policy, and the fact that they've already been working with us and they are known.
He submits that this week before the 22nd. It looks like this is the deadline, and it's the deadline, and
Yeah, DES is working with us pretty
Good.
well, and they know we've been working with McClure Engineering, but we need to get approval from the select board before we can sign this.
now what will be the source of these funds? 19,500, just the engineering.
These funds will come from the water fund to put that together.
And then it's likely they're going to come back with a proposal for the installation of this system. We're going to look at that as a town expense or as again, a water expense.
Well, it'll be a water expense no matter what, because it's for the water system. We're not supposed to use town funds for that. But there's a few different options and ways that we might be able to fund that as we move. We'll be looking at all of those.
We need to hereby authorize the town manager or designee to take such action to execute all documents may be necessary to effectuate this agreement. Second for that? Agree we have a motion?
Yeah, Tracy seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good plan. Obviously, because it's an area of great concern for a certain part of our constituency, I think we need to be very open with this. Anything develops, any little way that shows progress, make sure that that gets right out there as quick.
Yeah, no, we'll continue to get that out there as quickly as possible, and
That's great.
working on it the past few months, but I'd like to, I mean, We've been talking about trying to get this well online and more usable.
Next up, we have deliberative session debrief.
Unless you want me to talk, it was really just a chance for the board to discuss the deliberative session, what went well, what they thought could have went better, and things that we need to be looking at for next year. As Tracy mentioned earlier, we need to have some conversations. It doesn't need to be right now, but probably over the next couple months of where we want to hold it. Do we still want to have it on that second Saturday that we can have it, or do we want to move towards the first Saturday? I know
Definitely
school
want
does
for
it.
Saturday and beat the school out for their opportunity.
Well, the school will get it because they trump us in their own places.
Do they, regardless of what we want?
But, you know, there is the opportunity or the possibility to do it that afternoon, but, you know, is it too long? I think those are all the discussion factors that we want to have.
Yeah, so I talked with a few people, including like the ballot clerks. I think we should go to them and ask their questions, because of course they go to the school one in the morning. And I asked, how they would feel about doing the town in the afternoon. Their initial reaction was it would be a very long day, and it might be challenging logistically because they would have to change buildings. So they'd have to have a full setup at the high school and then a full setup at the elementary school in the afternoon, and it would just be a very long day for them. That was their initial reaction, and they're thinking, and I asked them to think about it as they went through it. So that's one consideration. I also just briefly asked the advisor for the school's audiovisual club, who of course did a great job with all of the videotaping and the mics and everything. And he did not say no to doing it on the same Saturday, but he said it would probably be a no, just from again, logistics and the number of students, because they do the school in the morning and then they do Canaan at 1 o'clock that same day. So they already have a full day set up that first Saturday. So those are things for us to consider as we move forward as well.
I do note that the school system does send out a very brief mailer to all the residents of all the towns.
Overall, I thought it was, as our first deliberative session, I thought it was fairly successful. It had a few quirks to it. Clarifying what a deliberative session was important for some people who didn't quite understand. It was not meant to be same as a town meeting. That discussions had to be limited specifically to the warrant articles. That was a bit of a learning curve for some folks, but we got through that. I think that overall it went fairly well and was clear what we were doing. We got votes on the issues that we needed for the warrant articles, and we'll look at a few of the bells and whistles for next year to tighten it up a little bit.
Are we still thinking about changing the budget season calendar pursuant to the change with the town meeting? Weren't we suggested to move it up like a month or two?
That'll be
budget
the
committee?
budget creation calendar, and I'll work with the budget committee coming up soon on how we'll do that. It's going to be a little bit difficult to move it too much, because coming into that August timeframe when we start building the budget, we're still just barely half the year in. So, getting those things done, and then a lot of the information comes in November from the state, but I think we can do a better job nailing down revenue, some of those things early. So I'll be working with them on how we want to work that budget process.
And then I think just like some of the lessons that we learned about starting planning earlier this year, I think everything just felt super crunched at the end and we had to just let some things go. I think we can learn from that for next year too. I'm also interested in what Kate has to say. I know she's not here, but I feel bad having this conversation without her present.
Is the date of the deliberative session, is that a date we, on choosing?
We do have a date, but it's a window of time.
I thought we did it on the latest one.
There were 2 Saturdays in the window that we could do it. The first Saturday was the school and Canaan's deliberative session, and we picked the next Saturday, which happened to be the last day that we.
Yeah.
But we could pick any day between that window. But I do think Saturdays work well.
I agree, and I wouldn't want to try to do it any earlier. I think we were pretty stressed trying to get it done for that date.
The only other thought in my mind would be whether we'd ever consider an evening. Some towns do it as an evening.
Never thought of that.
Something just to think about.
Yeah, I think a weeknight's something to think about. It does get complicated if you want to use the school, because the school gets used at least until 5 o'clock, and then most days in the winter, well, in February, there's basketball after as well. So it can just get complicated, but it is something that we should think about.
Unless there are tremendous hot topics on the warrant, the group that we had this year would fit in this room.
I would say the school in the evening would be really difficult because we have to set it all up, which we do on Friday evening for a Saturday morning. And if they were using it till 4 or 5 o'clock, it would be pretty late by the time we got started.
So evening would imply really that we have it in this room.
I think so. Once we get to that point, we did have, 98 registered voters there, which technically would fit in this room. We did have more people than that, but we'll learn a little bit more in March when we have UVBA breakfast here.
Any other thoughts from the board?
No, but I think, to be fair, I want Kate to have an opportunity to weigh in on this topic, and I would ask that we relist it in our March agenda as well.
Next up, we have designation of authority, Crystal Lake Watershed Management Plan, Clean Water, SRF Low.
I think this is pretty straightforward. I've been working on the application process. I'm about done for the Crystal Lake Watershed Management Plan. And as part of that, even though it was voted at town meeting, I need the select board to designate the authority to me or whoever they would like to designate authority to.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to designate authority as the authorized representative for the town of Enfield to the town manager for the SRF loan for the Crystal Lake watershed.
Second.
That cover it?
I believe so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, financial report.
Okay, so like we've been doing in the past, on the second meeting of the month, I try to give you guys an updated financial report. This year was a little bit early when we pulled the expense reports and revenue for January, and probably the next couple months we'll highlight a few things, but you know, it's still really early in the year to say how we're trending on those things. I can point out that From the tax collection standpoint, we're at 91% for that second issue tax bill in 2025, so that's really good collection there, and we'll continue to, actually, it's for both 2025 tax bills. And, we continue to do well collecting taxes. There was a little bit of concern coming out of DPW, that big ice storm in the beginning of the year. Cost quite a bit of money for salt, overtime, all of those items, but we often get a little concerned early in the year when it seems like we're spending our budget right away. When we look at trends over the past few years, the majority of our bigger storms do happen this time of year, and in November, December, we don't usually have too much coming in at the end of the year. So I think we'll be okay there, but it's something that we're going to continue to watch.
That's actually a nationwide issue right now.
Yeah.
Shortage of salt.
Yeah, shortage of salt is, which is driving the prices up.
We're getting it shipped.
Yeah, we haven't had any problems getting it. It's more, I think that first storm cost us $25,000 for one storm, and it's just, it makes you sit back a little bit and go, whoa, what's this going to do to our budget? And we've had a lot of storms, so the DPW crews have been out a lot. We continue to watch that, and we will watch it as we're moving through this year. We're also working with the applicant that I discussed coming up with the police opening. If the applicant that we're looking at does come in, they're looking at starting. Chief Holland's been working with them in the June timeframe, which gives us a few months of benefits and salary, which will actually help out the budget a little bit moving forward. I already gave you the financial update in my manager's report, so I'll do that again. The one thing that I have done is we've talked with, we actually brought MRI into our last meeting with Edmunds. We were, I think, planning on talking to Edmunds about pushing off the software for a little bit, and they actually came to us saying that they had some staff turnover and they were going to have to push us back in the schedule a month. So we'll be working with MRI to make sure our books are in good form, ready to go before any transition. Hopefully we have a new finance officer in that same time frame. After thinking about it a little more, talking with MRI, not that we want them to do the transition because that's a lot for a new finance director to come in, but if the transition's happening as they start learning on our new, probably the best of all worlds to have them, instead of trying to learn one system, that they working on the new system as we transition. From the treasurer standpoint, if you look at that, I won't read you all the numbers, but we're doing pretty good coming right out of the tax time. We have talked with Mascoma Bank on the savings sweep and the operating sweep about the possibility of a CD to get us a little more interest. They've advised us that they did raise our sweep savings accounts interest rates a few months ago. Those are actually higher than the CD rates right now. If we leave the money in our savings account, we're getting a little more interest than we would if we got a CD. That 2025 is almost fully reconciled. We're just finishing up some stuff from year end, and then we're working with MRI on some of the bigger liability accounts, those types of things. That fully cleaned up, but we're up to date on that, and we're working in the office to get revenues put in and on a more consistent time frame and making sure those are done on a monthly basis. Kind of went through taxes, but there's some percentages in there to look through. Overall, fund balance is, like we talked about in the audit, it went down a little bit this last year, and then the water one went down a little bit too. As the auditor said, we need to continue to watch that, but if you look at our audited amount of $263,496, it's over 6 months of expenses, and the auditor recommends 2 to 3 months of expenses. I personally would feel more comfortable, especially with the lower amounts we have in those budgets, to maybe aim for that 6-month time frame, but I don't think we should be much above that. So we can have those discussions as we move forward. I would like to get some of these bigger projects done and the new loan payments on board before any bigger decisions with that, but it may be something that we move a little bit of that money into capital. I don't think we're anywhere near a point to not implement water increases or something like that because of it, because our capital accounts are pretty small compared to some of the projects that we have on the coming future. Sewer's about the same as that. We're still in a negative fund balance situation, so it's a little bit different. But we are expecting to have more than that in fund balance come out of 2025. So as we talk at the rate setting, that I believe we're going to finally move into a positive fund balance situation, but we should be moving towards that, I'm going to say 6 months again in fund balance to be able to handle at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So we'll continue to watch that as we move forward. We did see a pretty big reduction in our wastewater treatment costs last year, which was due substantially to the I&I project and drought. Then this year, the reduced rates are going to go into effect as well. So I think we're sitting in a pretty good spot there, but we'll continue to watch that account. I think we added this last month, but we added the capital projects section for you, and we'll try to keep that updated as we're moving through those projects and that money spent. And went ahead and put the 2025 grants in here, but we are starting to receive 26 grants, so we'll start to update that list into the 20 move forward so you guys can see that. Trustee terms on this are actually not right. Scott Tarami's trustee term is in 2027, not 2025. Other than that, it's pretty close to accurate, and we wanted to put in this, just the account names, what accounts we have, what are in there. The ones that are marked closed have been closed by town meeting, but the trust funds have not completely closed those yet. They have a few questions for the auditor this year with the kind of the reconciliation of the accounts that had the flood many years ago. We're gonna work with our trustees and the auditor to get some of that done, and then Scott Tarami from the trustee of trust funds is going to come speak with the select board on the process that they end up deciding on. And I want to work with Scott a little bit during that time frame, and we're going to talk to the select board about rearranging a little bit how some of this process is done to get better numbers to you a little more efficiently. We may do a little bit of the work in-house with the oversight of the supervisors of the checkbook. Just make sure things are.
What is the status of that fraud which occurred several years ago? That
It's pretty much closed
I thought
out,
it was closed out already.
but they have a little bit of money, and Steve kind of told him how he should disperse that, but he wants to talk to the.
I thought it was dispersed based on the percentage of the funds that it came from originally.
That's what we recommended, but not 100% sold on how or how he wants to do that.
Was that?
Scott Tarami, the treasurer of the trustee of trust funds. So he wants to work with the auditor to get a little better sense of exactly how they want that to be done. So we'll be coming to you very soon to get that done.
Now, all right. So his term is not 25. You say it's 27.
Yes.
What are we doing about the third trustee since we've had the resignation?
Well, we have
So is that going to be listed on the ballot?
one on the ballot. They're both on the ballot. One's running for and one somebody's running.
So who's running on the ballot? March.
Paul Bianco is running
Okay.
for a seat, and then there's one seat that's vacant on the ballot for a
Right.
write-in.
Okay. So we have one candidate running for one seat. You're saying the Scott's term is actually 27.
Yes. And we will keep those on there so you guys can see those on a month. Know who's on and how many seats we have available, if there are any. We'll be working on that process. Mentioned. And then the final page you guys did have in your last financial report, but it's just the 2025 debt service report that shows. Have any questions?
Just two small comments. On the trust funds, I think the community nurse fund is missing. You just add that in,
Fund?
the community nurse.
I don't think that's a trust fund. Interdepartmental fund.
Okay.
We can add it on
It-
there.
That'd be a good thing to keep track of, so that,
That was under their purview.
It's not under their purview.
okay. But it'd be a good thing to keep track of, so that we know whether or not we have funding, donation funding for the year, or whether we need to make a change in some form or fashion. And then my other comment is regarding TIF. We do have the floodway project going, and that should be represented somehow. I don't know if adding it to the capital projects table is the right way, or a quick little summary up in the TIF section, but with that floodway project happening, we should somehow capture that.
Mention it and I'll add it after it passes.
Yes, fair. That's fair.
But on the regular reports, we should list the fund balance.
But he has that listed. There's just, we did the initial floodway study, and they recommended going further up the watershed, and seeing whether by doing that, you can actually get data that would
Yeah, they're going to
justify changing where the floodway actually is. And that sounds promising, so it's worth doing.
Yeah, they're looking at doing some hydraulic modeling to make sure that before projects that we don't want to do some big project and then it not change it. So that'll
When might we receive that report?
well, I'll sign the contract to enter that contract after the budget is. The budget's not approved, then we don't have that too.
Long a timeline, speculating.
That'll be done this year.
Around that quickly.
They already did the major report last year. All he's going to do is look at, we're talking to him about the possibility of moving Boulevard Bridge
Right.
area so he can change his data in the program to show that opening there and see what that does to the. So it's really, it won't take him very long to do the hydraulic modeling. There's not a lot of data to collect. He's already collected that. Mostly just be running some scenarios to see what'll change.
Questions, comments? Up, we have the proposed review of select board legislation agenda, the 2027 session.
All right, so I threw some things together really quickly on what we've talked about in the past of things to put together. I did put on your table tonight 2 documents actually from the town of Portsmouth. Did not go out there asking for these, but they sent them out today, which is kind of a brief legislative agenda. That's the one with the blue on it as well. And then they have a legislative subcommittee procedure that they had adopted. On the manager's listserv, there was a couple discussions, and this is where this came from, of different committees in the town having legislation. Some people supported certain legislation, some people did not support that certain legislation, so they went ahead and put together this legislative procedure, if you will, that pretty much authorizes those committees to work with their, I'm going to call them state counterparts, but Conservation Commission has a Conservation Commission group that talks, and energy committees themselves and community power, those types of things, to support legislation. I just wanted to give it to you to look at. I think it's something that we should probably discuss before it's a problem, not after it's a problem. And, you know, do we want those committees to write their own legislative support, or do we want to run it through town? The hard part about running it through the town or select board is legislation moves quickly. Sometimes you can't wait 2 weeks. So I think it's a good discussion to have, and then I just put together that legislation policy kind of guidelines that are in your there. Just wanted to have a little bit of discussion to see if we needed to start putting some sort of guidance together, not only for myself, but others throughout the town on what type of things we're going to support and not.
I personally feel that the topics you've chosen and the guidelines you've presented be good. I really agree with them.
The only one I thought of as I was going through it, and it may be too specific, but I know there's some legislation some years around timeframes for the state making decisions. And certainly the town of Enfield has had challenges with state decisions taking a very, very long time. Spending 4 years to try to put in a crosswalk is longer than I personally think that should take. And that was all because of sort of, state bureaucracy. So if there's legislation around, expedient decision-making when we're relying on state resources and permitting, I think that's something we should consider supporting.
I think what you've pulled together is a good start, needed. As a board, it be reviewed so that we can coordinate with other subcommittees through the bureaucracy that might be needed for them to be able to become involved in an issue to them, avoid the need to necessarily come back to the select directly for crucial response.
How do you think we would go about that process?
I think we just need to be able to encourage our subcommittees to speak up quickly when there's a topic of concern. If it can be made timely for the select board to weigh in, then we should be able to. Occasion, the way the legislature moves, they'll bring up a topic that seems to fly through committee without any opportunity whatsoever to respond. I know that the solar exemption question from the House, for example, belong extremely. I wrote to David Frack 3 weeks ago when I first read about it. There was no opportunity to bring it here. The other one, which was totally nuts, was that bicycle law which came along, flew through the legislature. All of a sudden, it was through subcommittee and was ready to go. So a few people woke up and said, well, this is kind of nuts to have to. But it flew through the legislature.
Can you speak in your mic?
So,
The people online can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's important that we do have an ability for subcommittees to be able to express their concerns quickly. And the 2-week gap to bring it to the select board can sometimes be an issue. That we should try to ease that flow, if you will, so that they have an opportunity to express their opinions.
we want to make this material available to all the boards and committees of the town?
Yes. So I mean,
Yes.
I agree with Tracy. We should be working towards empowering our boards and committees to represent the town in, in matters that are germane to their committee. And this kind of document helps do that. And I believe at this point, every committee has a staff member. Um, so I think that they just need to coordinate with staff if they're going to do something. And then, as a process standpoint, we should be working to empower them to, represent the town, utilizing staff to make sure we're meeting policy needs, and then staff can sort of raise a hand if they think it's sort of outside of the bounds of that committee or somehow not representative of the overall town policy. I think before we make a final decision, this is one we should probably have all five of us here. I think this is moving in a good direction.
I agree.
What I can do is take the Portsmouth procedure and kind of what we written. I think the legislative agenda, if you will, should stand on its own, but we should write some sort of policy of how we would like town staff and committees to address legislative issues.
I think it's much needed.
And then
Fortunately,
next
in
year,
our state, it's come to that point where we need to be vocal.
well, next year I'll try to get this for the December deadline too, not most of the way through the legislative session, but
I'm not even going to mention inspection stickers. Okay,
That one's weak.
next up, we have non-native invasive species update.
I'll go through this fairly quickly. You guys have a pretty good write-up in your packet. But as you know, we started the non-native invasive species project in 2021 under Jack Wasmack when he was here. And then we entered into contracts and really started the project in 2022, not very long after I started. We completed the kind of the data gathering in 2022, put together the plan, and then in 2023 we had some trainings and we taught a class to New Hampshire Municipal Association working with the state. And in 2023 is really when we kicked off kind of, I'll call it the spraying program, but we hired a commercial person to come in and help eradicate some of the knotweed and different things on town-owned properties. We've done a really good job, and actually when I went through with our contractor this year on what we wanted to update and work on for this year is kind of when I came across this list that we'd been going through. And, overall, we've completed 21 of the 34 locations, and the ones that we didn't have any to begin with, or we just have a couple left standing. So I highlighted in bold the few places that we're kind of working on that we really haven't started yet this year. But George Pond is treatment scheduled for this year. The Mud Pond Conservation Land I pushed off till 2027. It's just really hard to get down in there. So not a really good use of his time at this time. And then Bricknail Brook is kind of the same. We might go in there this summer with him to look around a little bit, but it's a hike in, hike out area, a little harder to get into. I'm guessing that most of the non-native stuff's going to be right in the front, but we need to do a little bit more research there. But other than that, most of this has been treated and is under monitoring now, which means most of it's been knocked down. We might get little sprouts of things here or there, but for the most part, it's been either eradicated or closely eradicated at all of those different properties. I will be working with the Conservation Commission and some other volunteer groups to do some pulling of buckthorn along Bog Road. So as we treat George Pond, we're not continuing to flush seeds down to where we're treating. But I think the upper part, there's not a lot up there, and it'd be a great volunteer day to go out there and to pull some of those plants and to get them out without spraying. But our next steps are to continue monitoring adaptive management, and And then I think the main thing there is to work with the highway department on starting on some of our roadsides. There's a lot of roadsides that have a lot of Japanese knotweed and some other non-native invasive species. The big thing there, and what I would encourage community members on, is when we're spraying on roadsides on our right-of-way, but on other people's properties, we are going to need to get approval from those property owners to be in that area, just to make sure that we don't have any problems, or they don't have a well really close to spraying that we don't know. So we'll continue working with them. The chemicals that are used are very safe, but it's something that we need to coordinate. So I've been working with DPW. They're going to work with our commercial applicator to get those reports out and to talk to people to get authorization to work on their properties, and then we'll group large sums together where we have authority to go in and spray. It doesn't make sense to do this property, skip that property, this property. We'll be working on that over the next couple of years. So I have Jim working on it to see if we had any roads this year. If not, we'll work over this year to get authority to move forward in 2020. Just wanted to give the select board a little better update than on the actual progress that's been happening in this area.
The only area that I'm aware of, not on this list, that has in parts of the season blocked entrance is Dustin Road, which is a Class 6 road adjacent to 223 Lock Haven and adjacent to John's property, actually. But it can tend to block off that Class 6 road. And the problem with that is that people do use that for off-road traveling on ATVs. And so that traipses it down and continues it down Dustin Road. So they travel with that, the material gets crushed and then it gets brought further down. So we almost need to open up the entrance of Dustin Road a little bit, keep the entrance clear so it's not as likely to get trampled down and carried through Dustin Road.
That's a good point. There are times when I can't even tell where Dustin Road ends anymore.
It's all on the Lock Haven side. The other end is fine.
But, I think that's the toughest thing to do, is dealing with the Japanese knotweed, because every time you mow alongside the road, you spread knotweed. The state is most notorious for that, I think. But I'm impressed with the number of things we do as a town to try to make things better.
I think this is terrific what we did starting a few years ago, and keeping it up, I think, is important.
Agree. Okay. I think we're down to administrative items. Public comments? Thank you for coming, though.
Thank you for attending.
Yeah.
I saw that. I saw that.
Us?
Ridiculous.
Really? Thank you for doing that. Really.
There are a few what can only be called outliers legislative agenda this year. I don't even publicly want to mention a couple of them. They're outliers. They're incredible where some of these ideas are coming from. Seems to have more of them than previous years, whether financial crunch or what it is, I don't know, but
I'm going to say, if we keep talking, we'll either need to go to the mic or adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
You.